He doesn't play the political game. He is a true patriot. Today, Dr. Ron Paul joins me on Off the Grid. Welcome, everyone. You know, not too many people have the courage to come on Off the Grid with me. There's not too many politicians in the United States that would dare sit down with me. But today we've got a guest, and this is a man, Dr. Ron Paul, former congressman, who does have courage. He would appear on even my conspiracy theory show. And I want to welcome Dr. Ron Paul. He's a former member of the House of Representatives, serving for many years. He ran for president as the Libertarian candidate in 1988, then as the Republican candidate in 2008 and 2012, the president of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity and chairman of the Campaign for Liberty. That's quite a title, Dr. Paul. Thanks for joining me.
Nice to be with you, Jesse. Good to visit again.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right down to it, Ron. You saw the State of the Union address. Your comments on it.
I picked out the part that I thought was the most threatening to our system and our society, and that is when the president was not bashful in sort of wagging his finger at us and saying, and to the Congress, if you don't do as I tell you and do it quickly, I'm just going to issue an executive order. You know, they've been doing that for a long time, and, Roosevelt was one that really abused his power, but it's been abused by both Republicans and Democrats. But I thought it was different this time because it was so blatant, it was so above the board. It's sort of like, our country's been involved in assassinations for a long time, but they're sort of covert and secret, and we wouldn't brag about it, we'd hide them. But this president, he's pretty bold. He says, yes, I believe in assassinations, and we have a committee to study it, and we have kill lists. And I think it was sort of this attitude that he had, and this is when he was the most emphatic in that whole hour, where he sort of said, I will do something, I want action, you do it or I'll do it. I thought that was probably the worst part of the speech and most threatening.
Well, maybe he's being honest though, Ron. I mean, I kind of like it if he's above board and says it to me rather than not telling me and then secretively doing it.
Yeah, I think this is, in a way, progress. It's not a test as much on him because I think most people are starting to realize what he's up to. But this is a challenge to the people. Now, if the American people just ignore it and say, well, he didn't really mean that, you guys are overreacting, and what will Congress do about it? Do you think the Republican leadership or the John Boehners of the world will stand up to him? There are some members in Congress that will, but unfortunately they're still in a minority and they are not going to be standing up to him. I worry the fact that it's out in the open. Yes, give him a couple points for being blatant and honest with us, but boy, everybody else fails if they listen to this and say, well, that's not so bad. Let a president assassinate American citizens. Let a president go to war like both parties have been allowing without a declaration of Congress. Even on domestic affairs, if Congress doesn't act as quickly as the president wants, then he will take care of this by repealing that provision that Congress is supposed to write the laws, not the president.
Yeah, I think you're exactly correct on that, and I think you make a great point in saying that Barack Obama isn't the first to be doing this, that it's been going on for a long, long time. And it seems, as you said, it's getting more blatant now. They're right out in the open. Now, it's getting shady. Do we really have three branches of government anymore? And I think it all comes back again, like you and I harp on all the time, following the Constitution, following the Bill of Rights. I found it rang hollow when they when he talked about closing Guantanamo. I mean, we've been hearing about that for 4 to 5 years. They're never going to close Guantanamo. Dr. Paul, do you think they will ever close Guantanamo?
Maybe when there's a total bankruptcy and they can't afford it and there are nobody's to pay the guards down there. That's about when it'll happen. But, if we give the president a little bit of credit for at least saying what he wants to do and how authoritarian he wants to be, wouldn't it be neat if we had somebody at the Federal Reserve come clean and say, this is what our real agenda is with monetary policy. It's to take care of all the special interests. It's to take care of our friends on Wall Street. It's to finance the wars. It's to, promote the welfare state. But don't hold your breath on that. I would think it would be pretty neat. I've always, Edward Snowden came clean. Wouldn't it be neat if we had somebody really come clean and be a whistleblower on the Federal Reserve from the inside, rather than us trying to figure it out from the outside? And the one place where they're the most resistant is in the area of foreign affairs. What they do with overseas, and they did a lot of it to the tune of trillions of dollars after the bubble burst in '08. And that means they can pass out trillions of dollars to other central banks, other governments, foreign banks, and it's a pretty powerful organization.
Do we have a chance against them, or are we pounding our heads against the wall?
Well, I wouldn't do this if I didn't think there was a chance, be engaged in trying to get information out. But I don't do this as a politician. And that is the reason that my approach in Washington was different. A lot of people used to ask me, don't you get frustrated up there with all those people you have to deal with and you never get anything really passed? And I said, well, I don't have a high expectations of ever having changed it that way. But my idea is trying to reach the people and change their minds to reject Keynesianism, to reject the Federal Reserve System, to reject paper money, and look to the Constitution. And that's where we're making progress. But I don't think we can have a whole lot of success until they're totally discredited. But believe me, and I'm sure you're aware of it, there's a lot of lost confidence in government. I think it's wonderful that they're not trusting our government officials. They believe we're being told lies. Edward Snowden now has not been totally destroyed by the media and the government, and people are starting to recognize that they want to hear the truth. And I think their system is going to fail. Their foreign policy is going to fail. The monetary policy is going to fail. The welfare state is going to make sure that we go broke, and they won't be able to just keep passing out more food stamps. So it'll come to an end, and the big question is, what is it going to be replaced by?
Yeah, for sure. Going on to the Snowden thing, I heard he got nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Is that correct?
And I hadn't heard that.
I did an interview.
Hope, but one thing is you have to question the Nobel Peace Prize. Remember, our president, by the week after he was sworn in, he got the Nobel Peace Prize before he had a chance to start a new war. So, yes, I think Edward Snowden deserves the recognition.
Well, the point I'm going to make on that could very well save his life. The fact that he got nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, because there was rumblings in this country. I read some of it on the internet where there were people that wanted him killed. They wanted him put to death. That they view him as such a traitor to our country and all this. And I think by him getting this nomination, it may very well save his life.
Well, let's hope so, but it's only been within a couple of weeks that I heard on the favorite Republican news station that they thought he should be executed. And believe that he's committed treason. So it's still out there, and a lot of the people in Washington believe that is the case. But hopefully public opinion will be swayed, will help sway a different attitude. And I think your point, being nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, might help call attention in a positive way to what Snowden has done.
Yeah, no, to me, I mean, how can they sit and call someone a traitor who has exposed the government for the lying and the breaking of our Constitution? I mean, that is a hero, Dr. Paul, somebody who's willing to take on the U.S. government with the truth. They are spying on us. It's all true. And it's the classic case of them trying to kill the messenger, not the message.
Well, they said that his crime was that he was turning over secret information to the enemy. But we have learned that he has not turned it over to the Soviet or the Russian government or the Chinese government. There's no evidence of that, and there's no evidence that anybody has suffered the consequence. But he has turned it over to us, the people. So maybe the government looks at us as the enemy rather than some foreign government. And I think that is the problem. So we are, a threat to the establishment. Truth is, treason in the empire lies, and they knew that, and that's why they're coming down hard on him.
Oh yeah, they got to make an example of him too. They want to make an example of him so that there's no more whistleblowers like him. I can see them doing that. And when you said that they're treating us, the people, like we're the enemy, I think you're exactly correct with that, because they've got us all under surveillance like we're all potential terrorists, like Ron Paul's a potential terrorist. Jesse Ventura is a potential terrorist. We have to put all these people under observation and watch what they do and all that. So let's go to the future a little bit. I hear a lot of rumblings that your son Rand may make a run for the presidency. Is that true?
Well, it's true that I've heard about that on the media, and people ask me about it, but I don't have any inside information, because my guess is that an individual, like Rand, who is well known now and his views are out there, my guess is that he probably has a ways to go to make a final decision. Nobody makes a decision so early, but he's being asked that question a lot, and I think when you look at the other candidates, it looks like he could do a pretty darn good job.
Well, it might be kind of interesting if Rand does run, if he took his father for vice president. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah, that'd be a little weird. I don't think that's going to happen.
Hey.
So, but I don't know if you noticed, but he's been on the receiving end. If you're out there out front and trying to change some views, and you speak critically of the government, like Jesse Ventura has and Ron Paul has on occasion, sometimes they come down hard on us. Now, lately, they've been coming down. It's the Washington Post and the New York Times starting to hit them. So maybe that's the indication that he's positioning himself rather well, because those aren't accidents.
No.
For a while, when I was running, I was totally ignored. But eventually, though, as soon as the primaries were about to start and the debates were starting, all of a sudden, Ron Paul's uninvited. He can't come to this particular debate. So if you're making inroads, then you have to be ready. And that's one thing I'm sure Rand is quite capable of realizing, that he has to expect, that there will be attacks on him. And I feel, one place where I feel badly about him is that he will be hit because of me. Maybe some distorted viewpoint that has been thrown out there, and then put him on the defensive. That's not fair, and that's wrong. It's dishonest. They shouldn't do it, but they will do it. Yep. But also, I think he's quite capable of deflecting some of those charges that are made. But I just don't like it that he has to suffer any consequences because of some misunderstanding of what I might have said.
Well, I'm sure Rand has his own mind, and they're going to get him for what he says too. But I would tell him this. My advice to Rand is, you're obviously doing the right thing if they're paying attention to you. If you're starting to get publicity, that means they look at you as being a threat, and they look at you as a player in the game. If they totally ignored him and all that, he would have more concern that way, I think. But just tell him to hang in there and weather the storm, because if they don't like him, they're sure going to come at him hard, because you and I both know that, absolutely. But I wish him well. I mean, to me, everyone has a right to run for whatever office they want in our country, and they should all be treated fairly and equally when they do that. I used to laugh when I ran for governor, because I had been a mayor, and I was the only candidate that ever had his private sector job put in front of his name. I was never Mayor Jesse Ventura. It was always former pro wrestler Jesse Ventura, where then it was Mayor Norm Coleman and Attorney General Skip Humphrey. And I always loved how the media did that to me. But no, if they're talking about Rand and they're writing negative about him, that's because they fear him. The status quo fears him, and they're trying to marginalize him.
Well, if I was a well-known wrestler, I'd want them to tell me that, because they probably figured a wrestler might know how to wrestle with those politicians and wrestle with those bureaucrats and confront them. So maybe it never hurts you.
Yeah. Tell me something. Do you think that Congress will be more active this year? You think they're going to do anything, or are we going to be stuck in this stalemate? And will Obama be forced to use his pen to do it on his own?
Well, Congress isn't going to do anything. Let's just hope that we can stop the president. Because if they do anything, they're going to do the wrong thing. They haven't, taken their oath seriously. And the reason why you're going to have stalemate and it's not going to stop is they're out of money and they won't admit it. They haven't given up on the philosophy of big government. Last night, when they had the State of the Union message, the Republicans sat on their hands most of the time until it came to foreign affairs, militarism. They were up there clapping and cheering all this. So they're not going to cut back. It's only going to be the limit on spending. And so far, the world has been foolish enough to finance our extravagance. So they're taking our money, they're taking our dollars, and we have a negative current account deficit. And as long as they're buying our debt, this is going to continue. But when the end comes, it's going to come quickly, because they're starting to question America's finances, and when they quit taking those dollars, we can't raise taxes, no matter what the liberals are saying. Let's raise taxes and solve the problem. We can't do that. And then if they reject the dollar, we won't be able to borrow anymore. And how much lower can you lower interest rates? Bernanke got us into trouble because they were 1% too long, everybody agreed. Greenspan did that. Bernanke gets in, he takes them to minus 1%. So you can't, Yellen, who believes that is the answer, where is she going to go? So it's going to come to an end. I don't think there's going to be any agreements. If they do, it's going to be superficial, and it won't be to shrink the government in the real sense.
Ron, would you agree with me? Because I was asked the question on my show, if I could cut two things in government, what would it be? And off the top of my head, I said I would cut foreign aid and I would cut defense spending. Do you agree with that?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Foreign aid isn't enough. It's significant and it's easy to cut, but percentage-wise it's small. But I would change your wording. I don't want to cut defense. I want to cut militarism. The military spending, and you know something about the military spending that is spent just to prop up corporations to build bombs and drone missiles and ships and things that we don't need for defense. So yes, we should. And I think politically it's an easier place to cut overseas spending, which would incorporate the military spending and the foreign aid, all that. That should be a lot easier than for somebody to come up and say, well, we finally have to put our house in order, so let's make sure we cut child health care. You know, even though I don't believe in those programs, politically it makes no sense if you think you're going to balance the budget on welfare for children. But ultimately we have to change the whole notion of what the role of government ought to be.
Ron, is Washington broken? And if it is broken, is that a bad thing?
No, we want stalemate. Everybody worries about it. And if they're going to do the wrong thing, that's exactly what you want. It's broken because we're broke and they won't admit that we're out of money. And the system is broken. And therefore the two parties that agree on so much, you know, they agree on foreign policy, they agree on monetary policy, they agree on a lot of welfare policy. They fight and argue over who gets control of the power, but they basically agree on so many of these issues. But the system is broken because we as a country, we are broke. And if you don't have the money, you can't afford it. And that's very healthy that people are starting to realize. I think the symbolism of Detroit is very, very good and very instructive, because they'd like to just ignore and say, well, that's an exception to the rule. But what if it isn't an exception to the rule? What if welfareism and excessive spending, what if Paul Krugman happens to be wrong? You know, that all his theories are wrong and that he gave us Detroit. Well, that's a big deal, and I think that's why they will say the system is broken. If the members of Congress could just get along together and agree on more spending. You know, when we were wealthier and our economy was growing, they got along fine because they'd compromise. I'll give you this, you give me this, and they kept spending. But those days are gone, and that's why we're nearing that climactic end, which will be an economic crisis a lot worse than what happened in 08 and 09.
Wow, that's going to be brutal if it's worse than that. Well, Ron, winding things up here on the interview, let me just finish by asking you, what's in the future for Ron Paul?
Same old stuff. I've been doing the same thing, I figure, from the very beginning. Before I was in Congress, the first time I ran and every other one, it was always for the goal of promoting individual liberty. And I did it. I was out of Congress for 12 years, and you know, I had my various organizations, and I do my best. I see the problems as an educational problem, not a political problem. Politicians, you know, will follow a prevailing attitude by the people. So I'm going to spend a lot of time on this Ron Paul channel to, you know, get information, get the truth out about the various problems that we have, foreign policy, civil liberties, and economic problems. And I'm also going to be very much involved in trying to find those people who want to study early on and have their kids learn about the freedom philosophy. And that's why I've started the homeschooling program. And that's getting underway and doing quite well. That's exactly what the progressives did. They got control of our schools. But now people are recognizing the school system is broken, and therefore they're looking for something better for their children, and I'm very much involved in that as well.
Well, Ron, keep up the great work. It's great to talk to you, and we'll keep pushing forward with you on Off the Grid. I want to thank you very much, Dr. Ron Paul, for joining me on Off the Grid. I'm on Tuesday through Friday on Aura.tv, and remember, people, be like Dr. Paul and Jesse Ventura. Stay vigilant.